from asking how you born, yeah.
Ex-lover's house and brutally murder his new wife in a fit of jealous rage. You also happen to be a young police officer at the time, and you stage the crime scene to look like a robbery, and that's just what police deem it at the time. And over the next 23 years, you work your way up the police department and become a detective that specializes in stolen art cases, which apparently the issue of stolen art rampant enough to require its own special unit. Now, over the span of time that you got on with your life and swept that murder under the rug, DNA testing got real good, and your Van Gogh sniffing ass about to have that nice cushy lifestyle turned right the upside down. In 2009, police just decided, hey, let's test the bite mark left on Sherry Rasmussen's arm. The DNA came back as female. They were like, female burglars? That's not a thing. They decided to pursue the theory that the Rasmussens had suspected the whole time that Stephanie Lazarus was the killer. So the cops just went into the office, pulled a discarded cup out of the garbage that Stephanie was drinking. When they swabbed it, it was a perfect match. Stephanie's own colleagues brought her in for questioning, and that's where shit gets spicy. 23 years after Stephanie Lazarus murdered Sherry Rasmussen, the wife of a man that Stephanie used to date, she's brought in for questioning. Sherry and her husband John's families had long suspected that Stephanie was the killer, even though cops suspected it was a robbery. They had even told police that Stephanie would stalk John and Sherry and go by their house and even Sherry's place of work, telling Sherry that if she couldn't have John, then no one could. Police now had the DNA evidence to prove that Stephanie was the person who broke in, smashed a vase over Sherry's head, brutally beat her in the face with the butt of her gun, left a bite mark on her arm, and shot her 3 times. Police just went up to Stephanie in the office one day and were just like, hey, this'll just take a second. We just want to talk to you about a stolen art case. They weren't there to talk about no art. They were like, hey, did you know somebody named John Rutten? What went down next is one of the most enjoyable dismantlings of someone's aura of invincibility that you could ever hope to see. And as they suck her back into that time period, the screws that held Stephanie's face in a normal looking position for 23 years start to loosen. Best part is they tell her she's free to go and she goes out into the hallway and they handcuff her and arrest her right there.
You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand?
Yes.
This is Diane Downes, and you may be wondering, why is this sweet little pregnant lady in handcuffs being arrested? It's because she is a murderer, and she's up for parole in 2021. Diane married her high school sweetheart, Steve Downes, and they immediately started having kids. She always said she wanted to be a mom. Their oldest daughter is Christy Ann. And then they had Cheryl Lynn, and then they had their son, Daniel. Diane got kicked out of college for promiscuous behavior. Steve claims that Daniel isn't his son, and that he is a result of an affair. So they get a divorce. In Diane's words, she said that she had 10 different partners that she had relations with, and less than half of them were married. So then, Diane starts seeing this guy named Robert Knickerbocker. But Robert Knickerbocker was married, and he said that he would leave his wife for Diane. She offers to kill his wife, and he's like, no, let's just move. Part 2 is already posted. Part 2 to the story of Diane Downes. So Diane offers to kill her new boyfriend's wife, and he's like, no, let's just move. Let's move to Oregon. So she packs up her 3 kids, and she moves. But once she gets there, he's like, I don't like kids. I don't want the kids to be with us. Diane starts getting desperate, so she's writing him letters and letters, and he stops answering her, and then the letters start getting returned to sender, so he's not even opening them. As soon as Diane left, he reconciled with his wife. And then on May 19th in 1983, Diane arrives at the hospital claiming that her and her 3 kids had all been shot by a mysterious man on the side of the road. So when they get to the hospital, Christy, who was 8 years old, had been shot twice in the chest. She was alive in critical condition and then ended up suffering from a stroke from all the trauma. Cheryl had passed away before they even made it to the hospital. She was 7 years old. And Danny, who was 3 years old, had been shot in the back. But Diane, who fought off the attacker, was only shot in the forearm. And it gets crazier. Part 3 to the story of Diane Downes. She's up for parole in 2021 and I don't want her getting out. So she pulls up to the hospital with her 3 kids in the car saying that they had all been shot. But she's not acting like a mom who just fought off an attacker and watched him shoot her kids. She's asking about blood spatter in the car because that car is brand new and she doesn't want it to be ruined. So the police are like, what the fuck, lady? And then her ex-husband shows up. Once they figured out what kind of bullets were used, he told police that she had that same exact gun. Yeah. And police are like, but why would she kill her kids? And then they read her diary, where she writes about how her new boyfriend that's married, doesn't like kids. But there wasn't enough proof. So Diane is able to walk free for over a year while her kids are in the hospital recovering. Her 3-year-old son Danny survived but was paralyzed for the rest of his life. And her daughter Christy survived and was learning how to talk again. And Diane knew that when Christy started talking, it was over for her. Go to part 4. Part 4 to the story of Diane Downes. And she does look like Tom Brady in a wig in this one. We're going to talk about the trial. So remember how Diane said that she pulled over on the side of the road because she saw a guy, and then he tried to take her car, and then he shot her kids and her, and then left. And then Diane raced to the hospital? Witnesses on the scene say that she was going between 5 and 7 miles per hour, so slow that it couldn't even register on his speedometer. Oh, I forgot to mention, she got herself knocked up before the trial to try and gain sympathy. Maybe it was because she knew that it was a done deal and she was going away for life. I don't know. The baby that she's pregnant with here has spoken out. I'll show you some of the footage of it. Anyway, this is Diane trying to defend herself.
I mean, that's not a believable story. If I had done this, I could have come up with a believable story. It really happened.
Yeah, so she bombed the trial. But her daughter spoke up and said, "Mommy shot us." She was sentenced to life. And then she escaped. Part 5 to the story of Diane Downes. So she was so desperate to win back her married boyfriend that cut her off, she shot all 3 of her kids and then shot herself to make it look like it wasn't her. But after being in jail for only 3 years, she escapes. She climbed an 18-foot barbed wire fence. I can't make this up. She climbed this fence, slicing her up, and goes to her prison cellmate's husband and is sleeping with her prison cellmate's husband for like a week, and then they found her. She's up for parole in 2021, and I pray to God she doesn't get the chance. Here's footage of her parole hearing from 2010. Keep in mind, in her original statement, she said that the kids were quiet on the way back. She could just hear her son quietly sobbing, meaning she thought they were all dead.
The state says that I was the one that shot them and that I wanted them dead. If that was the case, I would not have taken them to the hospital still crying.
Hell, you restrict somebody from it, they're gonna want it more.
I just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a joke. I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Dude, I just killed Cassie.
What you just heard is a tape recorded by Brian Draper and Tori Adamchich right after they murdered their high school classmate Cassie Jo Stoddart. On September 22, 2006, Cassie was house-sitting for her family and invited her boyfriend Beckham and his friends, Brian and Tori, to watch a movie. Before the movie ended, Brian and Tori left the house, but they intentionally left the basement door open so they can return later. After some time, the 2 boys snuck back into the house and started to scare the couple by making loud banging noises and turning the power off using the circuit breaker. Once Beckham leaves at 10:30 p.m., Brian and Tori go upstairs and proceed to stab Cassie around 30 times. These 2 dumb criminals were easily caught in the next couple of days.
Why did you handle it? I was trying to find like a pair of scissors and I found that and I'm like, okay, it's my work.
How is it possible to vanish into thin air while physically talking to another person? This is the strange disappearance of Brandon Swanson. On May 13th, 2008, 19-year-old Brandon attended a couple of parties to celebrate completing his very first year of college at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby, Minnesota. The first party Brandon attended was in Lind, which is about 7 miles from Marshall, Minnesota, where he lived. There, he chatted with friends, had a beer or 2, and decided to leave around 10:30 to 11:30 p.m. Friends at this party claimed that Brandon did not seem intoxicated and was very clear-headed. Brandon then went to a party in Canby, which is about 30 miles away from Lind and Marshall. There, he had 1 shot of whiskey and at around midnight decided it was time to go home. And again, his friends stated that at this party, he still did not seem intoxicated. Brandon normally took Highway 68 home. It was a straight shot and he had driven it many times. But on this night, for whatever reason, he decided to take a back road home. At around 1:15 a.m., Brandon drove his Chevrolet Lumina into a ditch and was unable to get out. 30 minutes later, he called his parents asking them to come and pick him up, giving them very specific directions of where exactly he was at and that he was near Lind. His parents, Annette and Brian, stayed on the phone with him until they got to where Brandon said he was, but they couldn't see him. They both agreed to flash their headlights as a signal, but they still couldn't see each other. This was odd as this particular area is super flat and would be easy to see each other. At 2:17 a.m., Brandon, being frustrated that they couldn't find him, tells his parents that he sees Lind's city lights and is just going to walk there to grab a friend. He tells them that he's going to cut through fields to make the walk shorter and is actively describing what he sees, a couple of fences, that he could hear running water, and that he's walking on a gravel road. At around 3:10 a.m., 47 minutes into the phone call with his parents, Brandon yells, "Oh sh*," and the call ends. His parents repeatedly try calling him back, but he never answers. They search along Highway 68, but find no trace of him. At 6:30 the next morning, they report Brandon missing to the police, in which they said it wasn't unusual for a young man Brandon's age to stay out all night, and that he, quote, had a right to be missing, end quote. Eventually, police do start looking for him and pull up his cell phone records. Through pings, they found Brandon was actually near Porter when he called his parents, not Lind like he said, which is about 25 miles away. Upon further investigation, police found Brandon's car about 1.5 miles from Taunton. It was on a gravel road, and because of that, there were no footprints indicating which way Brandon went. Extensive ground and air searches were conducted, but absolutely no trace of Brandon was found. Bloodhounds were brought in and tracked his scent down Country Road 16 onto an abandoned driveway of a farm next to Yellow Medicine River, and at one point in the river but getting back out and then leading to a drainage point. There his scent ends. The river was searched for 30 days but turned up absolutely nothing. What Brandon saw that night that made him yell "oh shit" remains a mystery. It has now been 13 years and Brandon's disappearance remains unsolved. To this day, Brandon's parents leave their light on in hopes one day he will come back home.
It's time for Cookies and Crime. This is the story of Belle Gunness, the first female serial killer I'm covering in this series. Belle was born November 11th, 1859 in Selbu, Norway. She moved to the United States in 1881 and lived with her sister and brother-in-law in Chicago. She first worked as a domestic servant, then got a job at a butcher's shop cutting up animal carcasses until she got married to Mads Sorensen in 1884. They owned a candy store together, but one day it mysteriously burned to the ground. Then the couple's home was also burned down. The couple received insurance payouts for both instances. Before their home burned down, 2 babies had died in their home from inflammation of the large intestine, which can result from poisoning. Belle had insured both of the children and collected a large insurance check after each death. Neighbors gossiped at the news because Belle never appeared to be pregnant. Belle's husband had also purchased 2 life insurance policies for himself. On July 30th, 1890, both of those life insurance policies overlapped, one expiring that day and the other beginning. Mads died of a cerebral hemorrhage that day. Belle explained that he had come home with a headache and she provided him with medicine for the pain. But when she later checked on him, he was dead. Belle collected a total of $5,000 from both life insurance policies. That's equivalent to about $140,000 in today's money. With that money, she moved to LaPorte, Indiana and bought a pig farm. On April 1st, 1902, Belle married a Peter Gunness. The following week, Peter's infant daughter died of an unknown cause in Belle's care. And then 8 months later, Peter died of a skull injury. Belle told police that Peter had reached for something high on a shelf and a meat grinder fell on him, smashing his skull. They suspected her of murder, but nothing came of the case. Belle was able to collect insurance money for Peter's death. Then, Belle started placing marriage ads in the Chicago newspaper. After corresponding with these men for a few months, they would come to the farm with a large amount of cash and the promise of marriage and would never be heard from again. Then, in April 1908, Belle's farmhouse burned to the ground. In the ruins, authorities found the bodies of a headless adult woman who they initially believed to be Belle Gunness and her 3 children. Local newspapers headlined with Belle as a praiseworthy woman who died in a fire in a desperate attempt to save her children. That headline was soon rescinded when they found an additional 11 bodies on her property. Ray Lamphere, Belle's on and off lover, would tell the police everything. One of the victim's brother warned Belle that he would arrive at the farm to investigate his brother's disappearance. To avoid being discovered, Belle asked Lamphere to burn down her farmhouse with her children inside. She would fake her own death and flee. Even with this information, Belle was still pronounced dead. They claimed the headless body they found was Belle, even though the body was shorter than Belle's height. What actually happened is still unknown.